Hello, and welcome to the 2022 Butterfly Blitz wrap-up event. My name is Kristen Valencia, and I'm a program assistant on the community outreach team at Credit Valley Conservation, and I will be starting us off today. With me today, I also have Derek Stone, Conservation and Program Manager at the Riverwood Conservancy, and Laura Timms, Senior Specialist and Ecologist at CVC. The three of us, along with Lindsay Jennings, Specialist at CVC, make up the Butterfly Blitz team. We'd like to thank everyone for watching today and participating in the Butterfly Blitz over the course of the last few months. Your efforts have helped us to expand our knowledge of butterflies in the Credit River watershed, and for that we are thankful as we continue to gain valuable knowledge of butterfly species and their distributions in the watershed. Today we will be providing a background on the Butterfly Blitz, discussing the 2022 project overview and data summary. We will also be announcing our award winners and highlighting our amazing participants' work. There are many beautiful butterfly photos to share, so stay tuned for this. And we're going to finish with an opportunity for you to provide feedback. To begin, let's discuss the CVC Butterfly Blitz background. You may be asking why we chose to do a Butterfly Blitz specifically. There are several reasons for this. So first, our goal was to connect people to nature, getting people out there and showing them what nature in our communities has to offer and what they can find in their own backyard. What better way to do this than with a Butterfly Blitz? There's also an issue of insect decline. Science shows a drastic decrease in insects over the last 100 plus years. And with the help of iNaturalist, this data helps scientists like Laura to track species decline. Along with this, there is an increasing interest in pollinator conservation. So the data from the Butterfly Blitz can help to show us how to protect and support insects, like butterflies, that are sensitive to changes. And why butterflies? Well, for one, they're easy to learn. There's already an established community of butterfly enthusiasts. And of course, they're beautiful. Who wouldn't want to chase butterflies on a nice summer day? The Butterfly Blitz program goals are, of course, again, connecting people to nature, getting people outside, looking at what's around them and in their communities, and of course, collecting high quality data on what is traditionally an undersurveyed group. Being able to focus our efforts on specifically butterflies rather than insects as a whole group will allow for more detailed observation into what's going on with this group. It also allows for the collection of more data in certain areas of the watershed. Laura is going to get into more details on Butterfly Blitz distribution and where we can focus more of our efforts in the coming slides. Lastly, the Butterfly Blitz is in its fourth of 5 years. So the program is going to run until 2023. And so therefore, this isn't a quick 1-year program. The team wanted to make sure to get a little bit of longer term data, as that can tell us more about species decline and perhaps even butterfly species movement around the watershed in that time period. The Butterfly Blitz runs each year from May until September, as this is when we see the majority of butterflies. There are several different ways to get involved, from submitting your observations to iNaturalist, to completing timed surveys and submitting your data to eButterfly, and joining us for CVC-led outings. I'm going to get into more detail about our outings that we had this year in a few slides, but to highlight this program and what is so great about the Butterfly Blitz is that you can be involved as much as you like. So you can come out to all of our events, or you could simply just provide observations through iNaturalist. We choose an observation of the week each week, and we write a journal post about the butterfly species in that observation, along with, we also post butterfly blogs and social media posts. And lastly, this year, we also ran a photo contest. So this is our second year of running a contest like this, and the photos we have received simply blew us away. And I can't wait to share some of our entries with you all. But first, let's get into how the data will be used. There are a number of things that this data will tell us. First, of course, where the species are found in the watershed. So this is known as species distribution. The data also tells us which species are at certain sites. also known as species richness. The data will also help us to assess local conservation status for butterflies in the watershed, and these are known as L ranks. Beyond CBC, this data is also collected by the Ontario Butterfly Atlas, and this information about butterfly distribution, richness, L ranks, and beyond will also help with determining long-term data trends. And so, without further ado, let's get into our findings from this year. This year, we will have 18 observations of the week. This means that each week, CBC staff delves into a butterfly species and highlights a specific observation uploaded to iNaturalist by one of our participants that week in a journal post uploaded to iNaturalist. These are the beautiful photos from these observations. You can definitely see lots of monarchs and skippers that were featured. Take a moment and pause the video to decide which was your favorite. A huge thank you to our participants who gave us some background information on their butterfly observations. We loved both hearing and sharing those stories over the course of the summer. We received an amazing 55 entries to our photo contest, which ran over 1 month this summer. A huge thank you to everyone that entered. We received many excellent entries, and it was very difficult to choose just one entry as the winner. Ultimately, Terrence Dewey was selected as our winner, and you can see his beautiful shot on the next slide. We've also included some shots from the other entries on this slide. I absolutely love the photos of the cat and its monarch friend. That must have been a really nice moment. Now, without further ado, here's our winning shot. We loved how bright the background came out in this photo, making the monarch truly stand out. If you look closely, you can even see the monarch is using its proboscis to taste that flower that it's perched on. Now let's talk about our CBC-led outings, and to begin, let's talk about our kickoff event. So this year we held the kickoff event at Riverwood. We had 26 participants who went through 5 stations to learn about the Butterfly Blitz. They learned about using iNaturalist, tips and tricks for photographing butterflies. They learned how to ID butterflies and also how to find them. We also went over how to complete a timed survey and ended the event with a trial hike through Riverwood, where everyone was able to test out using a net and also learned how to jar a butterfly to get a closer look. Next event was held in June, which was held at Warwick Conservation Area, and it was our first public butterfly count since 2019. All of the data from the butterfly count is submitted to the North American Butterfly Association, and it will be included in their annual report. We appreciated all the interaction and learning between our experts and new participants during this event. In August, we held a butterfly hike at Rattray Marsh Conservation Area down by Lake Ontario. We searched hard for the harvester butterfly, and we learned how to net butterflies with some of our new participants.
Thank you very much, Kristen. It's really cool to see how many people are coming out to these events. Very exciting to see how all these butterfly enthusiasts in the area. So at Riverwood, we ran a couple of events this summer to try and see what we could find at Riverwood in terms of butterflies. And we did run a workshop in July where 14 participants came out to observe butterflies all around the property. We went to quite a few different areas of Riverwood, and a bit of a windy day, so it wasn't ideal, but we did find 6 species, which was exciting to see. So yeah, it was a good day out, had some fun, and got to do some hands-on identification, which was always a real pleasure. And because July's went so well, we decided to do another one in August. That was a little more beginner focused, which was a lot of fun. We had 22 participants come out. We found 5 species around Riverwood, which is a lot of fun. But really in this case, it was just a lot of hands-on learning. So you can see some of the kids here having a good time and learning to identify, learning to be careful and not to touch the butterflies, as well as learning to make sure we let them go when we're done, and using the iNaturalist app, all sorts of really fun stuff. So we had a really good time at Riverwood learning these new butterflies and engaging some new people to the hobby, certainly. And we are very excited about the state of our new pollinator garden. So we just put this in last August, I think, and it's really, really been effective at pulling in all sorts of butterflies and among other pollinators, certainly. But for the purpose of this project, we've really been trying to get as many butterflies as we possibly can in the area, and it's been really, really cool to see the effect that this has had on the local butterfly populations, and hopefully we'll continue to monitor that in the next few years to see just what kind of butterflies come around to our brand new pollinator garden. So if you get the chance, come on out and see it. There's still lots of time to see those butterflies flying around all throughout the garden. So thank you so much for coming out to all these events. It's been a real pleasure to be able to meet everyone out there and have a good time and contribute to something really meaningful. And on that note, I am going to pass it off to Laura Timms to speak a little bit about the more practical effects of all the work that you've been doing all summer long. Laura, take it away.
Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Laura Timms, and I'm an ecologist here at CBC, and I handle the scientific aspects of the Butterfly Blitz. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes telling you about a summary of the data findings from this year's project and from the last 4 years of the project in overall. And I've got my camera on now so that you can see me and smile and say hello, but I am going to turn it off while I go through these next slides so that my picture doesn't cover up the maps and the numbers and all the pretty pictures we're going to look at. Okay, let's move on. So let's look at a few of the numbers from the Butterfly Blitz. So one of the major goals of the project was to collect data on butterflies, which had been an undersurveyed group in our watershed. And so here in this table, we've got the number of observations of butterflies on iNaturalist, the number of species that had been observed, and the number of people doing the observing, as well as people who registered for the Butterfly Blitz project, the number of people that joined the project on iNaturalist, and the number of people that completed timed surveys using eButterfly. So before Butterfly Blitz started back in 2018, in that summer, there were only 174 observations of butterflies of only 40 species. So in 2019, right away when we started our project, even though it was a shorter duration, it only went from June through August, we bumped that up quite a bit, getting over 1,100 observations of 55 species. We went up again in 2020 to over 1,800 observations of 65 species. 2021 up again in terms of observations, up to over 2,164 species. And this year, we haven't had quite as many observations. And there's a little asterisk there to remind me that the project is not actually over as I'm recording this. So these numbers will still go up. But we've had over 1,500 observations of the highest number of species yet, 67 species seen this year, which is amazing. And 157 of you participated in collecting that data for us. So thank you so much. And all of this to say that we've really had an impact in collecting more data on butterflies in the Credit River watershed, and really great data because we've seen so many different species over the last 4 years. This is a reminder, I don't have a number there for the number of people who've completed timed surveys using eButterfly. So if you have done that this year and you have completed data sheets, please send them to me when the project is over. My email address is there. We are also able to collect data from eButterfly directly. So we will collect all the data from anyone who didn't fill out a data sheet and did complete surveys anyways. So thank you very much, everyone, for this amazing impact that we've had. This year, the 10 most commonly observed species was led by the monarch again and cabbage white again. These two are always in the top 2 of our top 10 species. Many of the other species that we see here are sort of the usual suspects. We've got black swallowtail, we've got red spotted purple, peck skipper is up there, as is wild indigo dusky wing. So there weren't a lot of surprises in this year's top 10. There's always a little bit of shifting each year as some species are more common and some species are less common. And speaking of that, there were, as always, good years for some butterflies and bad years for others. So this year we had what I would call a good year for Baltimore checker spot. That might be largely because there was a population in Hungry Hollow that was really visible from the boardwalk where a lot of people walk. But we had more Baltimore checker spots than we've had in previous years. We also have had more European common blues. This is an introduced species that's recently moved into our watershed. And last year it was only known from one location, I think, and this year we were at about 3 or 4. So it does seem to be expanding its range in our watershed. What I would call bad years for some species. So we only had one painted lady observation this year. We never get them in really large numbers, but one is pretty small. We had way fewer red admirals than we've had in previous years. Certainly nothing like our first year in 2019 when we had hundreds of them. Northern crescents, we've had a big bump up in the last few years that this year went down. We only saw 23 of them. And we also didn't see as many mourning cloaks as usual this year, only 11 of them. So this is not to say this is necessarily something we're concerned about for any of these bad year species. Butterfly populations do naturally fluctuate, and we might expect some of these species to come back in larger numbers next year or the year after. There were 6 species that were not observed at all in 2022, but have been observed in previous years. So we didn't see any Milbert's tortoiseshells this year, and I kept waiting for someone to find one, and it never happened, which was interesting. No Aphrodite fritillaries, no harvesters, despite the best efforts of the whole team that was with me at Rattray Marsh in August for our guided hike there. No broadwing skippers, no columbine dusky wings, and no eastern pine elephants. So those species are all fairly uncommon or rare species, so it's not surprising that they weren't seen this year. But we know they're out there because people have seen them in previous years, so hopefully we'll see them again in 2023. You could consider this your target list of species if you're going to be participating in the Butterfly Blitz again next year, because these 18 species have never been recorded during the 4 years of the Butterfly Blitz. I will say that most of them have been recorded in the watershed or very nearby the watershed in the past. And so in theory, they could be here, although some of them are migrants that are only around in certain years, and some of them are fairly rare. So they may be more or less easy to see, but you could do some detective work and figure out where and when the most likely places to see these species are, and then add them to our list, which would be wonderful for our project in 2023. So last year I presented that same slide, but it had 2 extra species on it because there were 20 species that had never been recorded during Butterfly Blitz. Now there are only 18 because we knocked 2 species off that list this year by observing the Dorcas copper and the variegated fritillary. The Dorcas copper seen by Don Scallon and the fritillary seen by Julie Power. The Dorcas copper is a rare butterfly that's associated with very particular habitats where Don saw it, and the fritillary is a migrant species that's not around every year, but happened to be around this year, just very recently seen by Julie Power in her garden where she sees all her butterflies. So I was really happy to see these 2 species get added this year and bump up our species list. There were a number of other rare and uncommon species that were observed this year. I won't read them all to you, but it was really nice to see this list like this. And I've indicated them in different colors because the first ones, the ones in gray, are ones that are just generally pretty rare. They live in very specialized locations or maybe have small population numbers. The ones in orange are migrants. So they don't come up here every summer, but very occasionally they do expand their range and migrate into our area. And so we do see them. So the buckeye and the skipper, it was great to see them this summer. And then the ones at the bottom, the spicebush swallowtail, the common sooty wing, and the eastern giant swallowtail, they used to be rarer in our area, but they seem to be expanding their ranges and are becoming more common. So we may, in a few years, stop calling these uncommon species. They may become more common. The data collected through Butterfly Blitz is doing a great job at helping us understand where we are likely to find and how many places we might find some of these species that we call uncommon and localized. So to compare these 2 skipper butterflies, the Delaware skipper and the mulberry wing, both are on the list of species we call uncommon and local. But as it turns out, as we know through the Butterfly Blitz data, the Delaware skipper is actually found in quite a number of locations in the watershed, whereas the mulberry wing has only been spotted at 4 locations. So understanding this kind of information is really going to help us at the end of the 5-year project when we use Butterfly Blitz data to assess the local conservation status of butterflies and identify which ones are locally rare. Now I'm going to show you a bunch of maps that I love to look at because they show the impact that Butterfly Blitz has had. So on this map, every orange point is a butterfly observation made on iNaturalist. And this current map is how many observations there were in the watershed up to 2018, so before Butterfly Blitz started. And I'm going to show you a series of maps over the 4 years of the project so far, and you can see all of these blank areas fill in with little orange dots. Here we have after the 2019 project, after the 2020 project, after the 2021 project, and then after the 2022 project, so far this year, as I said, there's still a few days to go as I record this, so we may get more filling in. So I love how filled in this map has become. We have really been painting the watershed orange with these dots of butterfly observations. And that's contributing to all of that wonderful data that lets me talk about distributions and ranges and things like that. Even though we've done such a great job at filling in most of the watershed with butterfly observations, there's still a few places where it's obvious that there are no or almost no observations of butterflies at all. So these are gaps that we would like to address through next year's Butterfly Blitz and beyond. By using means such as targeted surveys or landowner and community outreach. And in these two particular zones that are circled here, the land is largely owned by private landowners, and so it'll take reaching out to landowners to get permission to survey or to ask them to join the Butterfly Blitz. Maybe you know some people that live in these areas that want to join Butterfly Blitz. So we're going to do our best to fill in as much of the watershed as we can next year through Butterfly Blitz and beyond. So those maps I just showed you showed where there were butterfly observations, but it didn't really reflect the number of species that we're observing in different parts of the watershed. So this is another way of looking at that data. You have probably heard me talk about the Ontario Butterfly Atlas before as another place where our data goes and contributes to the larger community of butterfly data out there that people can use. So the Butterfly Atlas divides the province up into 10 by 10 kilometer grid squares, much like other atlas projects you might know about, like the Breeding Bird Atlas. And there are 23 of those grid squares that overlap the Credit River watershed, at least in part. The numbers in the grid squares on this map represent how many butterfly species had been seen in each grid square before the Butterfly Blitz. So keep in mind that there are around 76 butterfly species that we could expect to see here in the watershed, give or take. So before the 2019 Butterfly Blitz, there were a bunch of grid squares in the watershed that had really low species numbers. And given that we expect there could be around 76 species there, half of that is 38. So we identified every grid square that had less than half the number of species we might expect to see here. And there was one up near Orangeville that only had 3 species recorded, which was clearly not accurate. So these low numbers, we don't think that this indicates these areas of the watershed actually have low species numbers. We think it's because people just weren't out there surveying. So you may remember we handed out maps with these grid squares highlighted and suggested places that you could go in these areas to look for butterflies to help bump up these species numbers and also present a more accurate picture of which species are in the watershed and where they are found. And I'm happy to say that your efforts have had a really big impact. So after the 2021 Blitz, so up till the end of last year's project, because the data from this year hasn't been entered yet into the Atlas, we have seen increases in every single grid square in the watershed, numbers getting up really high, up to 73 species down in Mississauga, which is amazing. And those grid squares that had low species numbers, most of them are now above that 38 species threshold, and there's a few we're still working on, but we'll get there. So I'm really thrilled to see these increases, and I'm also asking myself, what's it going to look like after this year? Because I know that many of you have been putting in efforts to find species in these undersurveyed areas. So I know we're going to go up again after this year's data is entered. So this is the end of the data section. I'd like to thank you all again for all of your efforts in collecting data on butterflies in the Credit River watershed. And now we're going to move on to the part you've all been waiting for, which is the announcement of who wins each of the prizes.
Right, you are, Laura, and I am very excited to be the one who gets to be able to announce a couple of these awards. So, thanks everyone who participated certainly this year. Of course, in our book, you're all winners, but more specifically, we had a few different categories where we were encouraging people to get out there and do everything they could, and it was really tremendous to see all the effort that was put in this year. So, while of course we thank you all for all of your incredible work. during the Butterfly Blitz, we did want to celebrate some of the particularly incredible achievements of our participants this year. And one of our prizes this year is an annual Conservation Parks membership. This is wonderful. This will get you into any conservation area from both Credit Valley Conservation as well as the Toronto Region Conservation Authority with a worth of $135. This is a really, really great opportunity for you to get out and see some of those different Conservation Authority areas where you may not have been to before. And also maybe give you a little bit of a leg up in next year's Butterfly Blitz if you can get into all those areas for free, certainly. So really great opportunity to be able to explore the region, the watershed, in a way that maybe you haven't been able to before. So very cool prize up for grabs this year, certainly. And we are very fortunate once again to be able to provide these beautiful framed photos by Robert Noble to all winners of our Butterfly Blitz categories, prize categories in 2022. Just absolutely gorgeous pictures. So thank you so much to Robert Noble for providing those yet again in 2022 to help us to celebrate all the amazing achievements of our participants again this year. We have some very lucky prize winners this year. So without further ado, I know you've been waiting for the past 4 months or so to hear who wins these prizes, and we're very excited to announce those right now. So again, without any further ado, the prize winners this year are Bev Lynn with the most species this year at 45. Absolutely incredible. Most of those species coming from the Acton area, which was previously an undersurveyed area, but not so much anymore, thanks to Bev's efforts, certainly, among others. But very, very cool to see. You can see some of the contributions she has there at the bottom of the screen. Some really, really beautiful shots of some interesting butterflies, certainly, and 45 species. Wow, really going above and beyond. Thank you so, so much, Bev. Really appreciate all your support, and we'll be in touch soon to let you know how you can acquire your prize. Thank you so much again. We have another winner in Julie Power, who is winning not the first time, actually, with over 230 observations this year in 2022, mostly from her garden in Georgetown, which is pretty amazing. Julie has a beautiful native plant garden with all sorts of different plants and butterflies that have been able to visit the garden. And Julie has a standing offer to share any of her native plant seedlings with people who are interested. So if you do have interest, please feel free to contact Julie via Facebook or via iNaturalist. She has a number of species. She's got some coneflower and some asters and I think some liatris even. So there are definitely some opportunities. I think swamp milkweed, if I'm not mistaken. So some really, really beautiful plants that might encourage butterflies in your own backyard. So congratulations to Julie, very well earned again this year in 2022 with again over 230 observations, winning our Most Observations Award. Thanks so much, Julie. And we also have the Rarest Species Award, who this year goes to Don Scallon for finding us a Dorcas copper butterfly. This is a species that is certainly not common in the watershed. In fact, there are only 2 previous records from the watershed in 1998, if you'd believe it, as well as again in 2016. So definitely a species that's known to be a little bit further north and mostly associated with fen ecosystems. So congratulations to Don Scallon for finding that incredible rarity in the watershed. Very well done. I will mention that this was a very difficult category to give an award away for. We had a lot of really great rarities this year. We had a couple of runner-ups that we wanted to mention. The first one was Bev Lynn, who made 3 observations of the crossline skipper, which had actually previously only been recorded once before in the watershed. And we also had another runner-up in Mark Johnson, who returned to the only site that we know of for the meadow fritillary in the watershed and made sure that they were added to the project. So thank you certainly to everyone for all your support. But a special thank you, of course, to Don Scallon for your incredible work in finding this beautiful Dorcas copper butterfly. Thanks so much. And I will pass it along to Kristen to give out the rest of the awards. On to you, Kristen.
Our lucky day was July 10th, and our winner is Kevin Kerr. He actually made 13 observations of 9 species that day. Check out those awesome photos. This is a slide where we get to shamelessly show some of our favorite photos. There were many more than just what's shown here, but these are just some of the highlights we've found. Take a moment to pause the video and tell us what your favorites on the screen are. Our best photo winner goes to Christine, and she took a photo of this common wood nymph. We decided this was the best photo because it has such a nice composition. It shows a butterfly feeding, and as you can see the butterfly wings details and the contrast with the flower and the background. It's a very beautiful photo. We also wanted to make mention that she was the runner-up in the most species and most observations category. So she did take quite a lot of photos, which is awesome. Thanks, Christine. And just a fun fact, the winning photo last year was also a common woody nymph. The award for most participation goes to none other than Patrick. Patrick and his parents have come out to every event we've held this year. And in July, when our event was canceled, they actually held their own mini event and they made iNaturalist observations of their own. A fun fact about Patrick is that he has a talent for catching butterflies in his hand. And lastly, he's just always very enthusiastic about catching butterflies. And thanks to Alan and Marianne, who are very supportive about getting him out to butterfly. We look forward to seeing you 3 at our next event. We just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who is watching and everyone who has participated in the Butterfly Blitz this year and beyond. We greatly appreciate your participation and we look forward to the coming year of the next Butterfly Blitz.
Hi everyone, it's Laura here again. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation summarizing the 2022 CVC Butterfly Blitz. If you have any questions about the Butterfly Blitz, or if you want to reach out and let us know what you thought about the 2022 project, if you have some suggestions for how you think the 2023 project could be even better, if you want to submit your eButterfly survey data or let us know that you added data to eButterfly, you can do all of those things or anything else you want to share with us about Butterfly Blitz by emailing either Lindsay or myself at the email addresses on the screen. We will also be sending out by email a follow-up survey to make it easier for you to share your feedback on how the Butterfly Blitz went this year. Thank you again for your attention and for all of your work this summer observing butterflies in the Credit River watershed. We really appreciate it. Stay inspired by nature, everyone. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.